Well, thank you for asking me again. I feel that's always a slight encouragement. To be asked once is an honor and a pleasure to this great organization. To be asked twice is even more of an honor, and I feel confident that either you didn't enjoy hearing what I said last time and want to argue with it, or you did enjoy it, in which case I'll try and develop some of the themes and the many things that have happened since we last spoke together. Can I say, even before further comment, how much I appreciate being asked and how much I appreciate being able to support this organization, and particularly, of course, the wondrous Baroness Nicholson, Emma, who has been such a driving force and such an encouragement, not just to you in organizing IBBC over the years and helping to do so with the distinguished support here beside me, but helping this nation and this parliament and this people on this island understand your great nation and its problems and its challenges and its absolutely huge opportunities. So I'm very, very I'm humbled, really, that you were happy to hear more of what I got to say. You've given me 15 minutes to cover the entire global political scene, the state of mankind, the issues before us today, the issues that we've been battling in the past, and the problems of the future. I can tell you nothing that you don't know already about the many swirling problems around your own great nation. What I can tell you a lot about is what is happening here in Northern Europe, how we are fitting into a world which is in a total state of uncertainty, how we as a nation are trying to reposition ourselves, and a little bit about what to do about it. Analysis is very cheap and very plentiful these days. Answers to where we next move and how we, now different nations, can contribute to a less complicated and more stable future is rather in short supply. Lists of to-do lists are rather rare. Long speeches on what has gone wrong are very plentiful. I'm going to divide my 15 minutes into 3 5-minute bits. One is to share that analysis of where we are and the difficulties we face, both in your country and ours, some similar, some completely different. In the second 5 minutes, I'm going to join and share with you some thoughts about how we might pick positive opportunities, optimist opportunities, the golden thread of opportunities out of many aspects of the present situation and turn it from a disadvantage and a negative to a positive. And the third 5 minutes, I am indeed going to give you a brisk to-do list of things that we should all be concentrating on in our various nations to turn the tide against the avalanche of gloom and the avalanche of doom that flows from the pens of many authors, particularly, I think, in the United States, but certainly in Europe as well, as to what is going to happen next in human relations, international relations, domestic relations, the stabilization of the world's finances, the stabilization of the outcome, some kind of outcome to all the storms of rebellion and violence and civil war and actual outright war that exists in the world today. So if we may start, first I'm going to need, because I've been rushing this morning from another meeting, a glass of water. Thank you. Now, will be my fuel. And let us begin with where we are. If you read the English papers this morning, you'll see they're full of statements about war, strategic advance and re-equipment, finding the finances to replenish our arsenals of weapons and face new world conditions in a state of urgency that you won't have heard before. We will have heard in your private conversation you would have heard probably in many discussions with your colleagues, you won't have heard from the official mouth of governments and international organizations in quite such explicit terms as you are hearing them now. The Prime Minister of this country, Sir Keir Starmer, was saying yesterday, that we are in Britain, we have to be battle ready. Battle ready. I do have news for Sir Keir Starmer, which of course the battle is on already. It's not a question of battle ready by 1929, by 2029 or 2035 or whatever the aim is of us to boost our classically defined defense expenditure. It is a question of preparing our nation, indeed it's a question that we should have prepared. This is in the past. We should have prepared our nation for entirely new kinds of conditions of defense and readiness for entirely new kinds of weaponry and war and battle, which is now being waged in some aspects in Ukraine, is now being waged in many other places around the world. The news I have for Sir Keir Starmer is we are already under attack. That we're not moved into an age, thanks to the microchip, of continuous information battles, continuous misinformation. We're in what many people now call a perma-crisis. We're facing, in a sense, and this applies to all governments seeking to stabilize and lead forward their nations, we're in a sense of perma-war, and we are in a posture where we are required to find all the time, in an innovative way, perma-solutions to the constant tendencies to violence, the tendencies to instability, and the tendencies to total disorganization, chaos, and anarchy, which are there. And they are there in a way much more strongly so than they were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, or before the digital age began. And that is really the gloom message. It's not the end of my analysis of what's wrong, but it's the gloom message for you this morning, that we are in a pattern of tensions and antipathy and antagonism to organize hierarchies of government of a scale and on a scale that has never been known before in history. And it means, first of all, that when we come to defense, in your country and in ours, everything must be defended. It isn't just a question of our military defending our military itself against other military and weapons attacks of the classical kind. We are in an age where the civilian population is not only involved, it's in the front line. You may say nothing new about that. There was always throughout history an aim to destroy innocent people and embroil the civilian population on a large scale, but the scale has been magnified and amplified 10 or 20 times. Have a look at the Ukraine scene just before we go on, where we see a deliberate and direct attack to destroy civilian morale, to destroy the civilian readiness to stick to order, in the belief that if you destroy the civilian behind, you will destroy the morale of the military forces in the front. That's, of course, a lesson of the 20th century, which was applied devastatingly. So our German friends remind each other when they felt they were never defeated, but what collapsed was their civilian morale. It was rather different in the 1940-45 war, although there's no doubt that people like Goebbels and Hermann Goering believed that if they could smash this city we're sitting in and smash morale through bombing of the British public, they would smash the morale of the fighting forces. What they lacked, of course, was the weapons to do it, the direction and accuracy, although that has now been changed. The weapons now do exist around the world for us all to destroy each other with deadly accuracy and suddenness. So people are involved, and involved more than ever before, and therefore it is the defense of people that we must be concerned with, not just the defense of armed forces as against other armed forces. Civilians are all in reach. Ukraine shows that. The nuclear threat behind it is in itself under debate. That is, again, a very worrying situation, not much discussed in the press, but we know that the nuclear pattern comes into a conversation. People say, poor Ukraine, why didn't they stick to their nuclear weapons? The Koreans are inquiring about becoming a nuclear power. Poland is inquiring about becoming a nuclear power. Other countries are. That's very odd, because some of us have spent 50 years trying to prevent the spread of proliferation of nuclear power. Now suddenly the whole argument is on its head, and we are being asked to consider the proliferation and spread of nuclear power as a defense against the kind of fate that has befallen the Ukraine. Moving on from that, we now find that the information distortion and information faking are now part of the weaponized system. The uncertainty and distrust as to what kind of information is being fed to the public is enormous. Even down to the level of the community, down to the level even of the family. People are challenging what they're fed in information, whether by government or by anybody else. And this, of course, it undermines the one thing that is a necessary cement or glue of a democracy and a confident free society, and that is trust. If the trust is not there, then the foundations of a society begin to collapse. It is not possible to maintain respect for and trust in the rule of law in a democracy unless there is a degree of trust. If trust collapses, then all certainty collapses, and of course, if the political certainty collapses, investment certainty also collapses as well. So they have a lovely, gloomy list of things that are all being written about by endless American books, some English books here, and creating an atmosphere of enormous uncertainty of a kind that many people have never encountered in their lifetime. The values and certainties, the commitment really to the idea of progress, which came into this country about 300 years ago, at the time of the Enlightenment, that there could be progress and it could continue and it could raise living standards and it could preserve human life and it could create a good background of stability and a good normal bargained relationship between the state and its citizens as a stable thing, the bargain being the citizens pay their taxes, obey the law, contribute as citizens to the nation. The state itself provides the safety, the security, the protection against both foreign and domestic forces and crime, the stability, the education, the services, the decent housing, the work, and so on and so forth. That was the bargain. The bargain is now in doubt, and at every point of contact between state and citizens is fluid. I'm talking about my own country. I have no authority to talk about yours, but you can recognize some of the qualities. Where does this certain line between what the state does and what the citizen does, where is it being given some firmness and restored to a degree that was said to exist in the past? Right. Second, where do we turn from here then? I am an optimist. I think there are golden threads. This is a time of strategic reinvention and innovation. And I think that some of the forces which have caused the disintegration of our societies are also capable of being turned on their head and becoming the cause of the forces mobilized to create a reintegration out of disorder. So order can be restored in a balanced way. I'm not talking about the sort of Napoleonic era, which I see some journalists are now returning to in their commentary, where you start with an unpleasant, over-centralized order, revolt follows, revolution, all the rest, and you end up not with liberation and freedom, but with a worse and more centralized dictatorship than when you started. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a return to stability and using the forces of technology, which are behind much of our disorder, to also be the forces of order and survival and stability again. I'm going to come to my to-do list finally in a few minutes. We can't defeat populism. You can't put back into a bottle the capacity of the information revolution, which involves over 17 billion exchanges on the mobile telephones, which there are 18 billion in this in the world at the moment. You cannot put that back in a bottle. Governments everywhere, including the one here that I have the honor to serve in under several decades, have got to work with an entirely new material of human connection and attitude, entirely new. The idea that you could somehow keep the populist, the general public out of high policy, out of foreign policy, out of public policy, out of decisions on finance, taxation, and everything else, has gone. We are, I've served in the British Parliament in various capacities for 58 years. We are now more in the public eye. More is expected of us in the parliamentary system. More that is expected, the more people find themselves disappointed. So there's more criticism and more disrespect than ever before in that last 58 years. It cannot be defeated. We have to stretch out and develop new ways beyond those of the present political parties for connecting with and explaining the processes of government and the processes of decision. If we don't do so, then you will see more scenes like you saw at the American Capitol and January of the year before last. You will see more celebrity creatures emerge out of the populist impulse. You won't see a more direct strategy because, of course, populism isn't a coherent thing. It is a mass of different opinions, often arguing with each other, and not in any way a clear direction. It leaves governments on a constantly defensive position where they're in great difficulties to find out what the direction of the society is going to be acceptable to the people. So my message from that is simply that the forces pulling us together could be stronger than the forces pulling us apart. But please have no illusion, and I address this to every government that I have the privilege and honor of exchanging views with. Please have no illusion that nothing is happening and not much action is necessary if we just stumble along. There are powerful undercurrents operating in all our societies, which, as I say, could drag us apart. I am in an optimistic mood myself, penned a little book the other day, which is called Avoiding the Coming Anarchy. No, avoiding. So admitting there is coming anarchy, but we can avoid it if certain steps. Here's no camera for it, but you will see there it is in my hand. So if we're feeling, it's not long, it is a short book for optimists in dangerous times. If we're feeling like reading the odd chapter in the aeroplane, and it's not very expensive, it's 20 quid actually, from Amazon. Off you go, please, to buy it, and please my publishers, if not anybody else. Now, let me end by saying what we shall be doing. Analysis is easy. Forces undermining our society are easy to see. Where do we turn in practical terms? First of all, there is the small matter of being engaged in what here in Europe is described as an energy transition. It's just about the biggest transition in the entire pattern of world industry that has ever taken place. It leaves far behind the Industrial Revolution and other upheavals in our industrial history, and it is sort of rattling forward. It's different from the great market forces that transformed our energy economies in the past, of course, because they were driven by markets and technology. This is partly driven by government intervention, the so-called external forces, the non-economic forces which the markets don't deliver off. So we now have to get straight the decarbonization process in all our countries and contribute effectively to the limiting of emissions and the threats over the next 10, 20, 30 years to our entire existence, world and world order. It's not going very well. Emissions are continuing to rise. Here in Britain, our energy policy is in great confusion. Cost of energy itself is much too high. And this we have to keep hold of, that green energy or clean energy or whatever your sort of energy, it has got to be within the cost budgets of industry and individuals for society to progress. If we can't deliver cheap energy, we won't be able to deliver stability and organization at all, or progress. First, I'm doing this in shorthand, but I've got only a few minutes left. Second, we need to strengthen our parliamentary systems. There's a general cry that parliaments are out of date and we should have public assemblies and so on to get through the next few years. On the contrary, I think we need a far more effective parliamentary pattern to develop. That respect has to be regained by Parliament from its considerable loss in the past. We should look around the world, all of us, at how we can strengthen the way in which parliaments are formed, who gets chosen and selected, how they act when they're in, what resources they have, how their committee systems can organize themselves to bring about contact with the public in an effective way. And I have just put in little brackets here, I see in my notes, have a look at Australia. I would talk to Australians a lot recently. Their country is doing rather well. They have compulsory voting. Have we all considered compulsory voting? I don't even know in Iraq whether you have compulsory voting. We do not here. I think I'm moving towards the belief that compulsory voting is a very effective way of getting people involved in the political, public and policy process in a way they are not. 3, we have to teach our children financial literacy. This is a financially illiterate nation you're in now. Most people don't even understand a balance sheet. They're vague about dividends. They don't understand where capital comes from. They don't understand how innovation operates. They're not taught in school anything to do with finance at all. That's got to be reversed. We're beginning to make some steps in the right direction. 3, we have to find a new means of uniting public requirements, which are enormous, for everything from potholes on the road to defending the nation in a dangerous age. We have to find means of financing these needs which fall on government out of private finance. There is a grey area between private finance and public borrowing and taxation. At the borrowing and taxation side, we're just about at the limit. I don't know how you are in Iraq. We'll learn possibly in discussion. But here we haven't got much movement left. It is private finance that must be organized to be harnessed for public needs. And the thinking about that has bumbled along, but is at the moment very, very slow. And we have to tackle that area. I'd love to talk a lot more about how we should do it. We've had one try over the last 20 years with private finance initiative, but it failed. 5, we have the disarmament framework of the Cold War, the post-Cold War, and the 20th century has actually gone. The newspapers don't seem to notice. We have no adequate disarmament framework in existence now. The Russian disregard for the entire system has blown it apart. We have to start again with an entirely new pattern of disarmament framework. 6, we have to ask ourselves, do we despair of the United Nations with its two huge cuckoos in the middle of it, China and Russia, who are actively conspiring against it, and start again, or do we build upon it? My own preference for it, we build upon it. I don't think we can start again, as they tried with the League of Nations between the two world wars in the 20th century. I think we have to build on the UN and build on matters like Article 106, which was tried in 1965 to move the United Nations along into the modern world. 7th, I am British peccadillo, and then I'll shut up. What are the alliances that are going to exist through this century? I noticed that the late Pope, not the present one, the late Pope was saying that he thought there were going to be 2 huge world organizations which would survive to the end of this century. One was, surprise, surprise, Catholic Church. I'm not a Catholic myself, but this is what he believed, very understandably. And the other, he said, was the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth? Oh, that's a British thing. No, well, it's not really. It's 56 nations, with 2 or 3 more applying to join, having grown from the original 9 nations, which spans all the continents, and is now beginning, because it's a people organization rather than just governments, to engage in stabilizing international affairs and having to decide how to cope with the totalitarian organizations and their ambitions and their destabilization in every continent. So I end my little comment to you by saying, have you all thought about joining our Commonwealth? It's a rather nice club. It's not over-centralized. It's not expensive, and there are all sorts of benefits. And it is a friendship with a purpose. And in this world, in order to survive at all, we're all going to need a lot of friends and a lot of cooperation, because there are very great dangers ahead. Thank you very much.